Okay. I want to just make sure that I don't have anything coming back to me. I think it's all good. Okay, welcome. Facebook keeps changing the interface, and Zoom, of course, changes the interface. And so every time I get on with somebody else from Zoom and broadcast to Facebook, it's a different experience. So just wanted to make sure that I was prepared for this particular experience today. So welcome everybody. This is day 4, I believe, of our lives in here in Villain, talking about and preparing for the program Wicked Games. We started on Monday with sort of an overview of the program and kind of a roadmap of where we're going. And then we've been following that roadmap. We had hide and seek first, where we really are learning how to find our demons, and then specifically how to find them within our dreams, how to find them within our bodies. Yesterday, we played Truth or Dare with our demons, and we started to invite this idea of instead of being locked in this sort of like battle for control, we actually invite our demons into playing a game with us, a sensational game, a highly sensational game, as Truth or Dare is, if you remember Truth or Dare, and the feelings that we felt when we were playing, and we had to admit those truths, and we had to do things that maybe we wouldn't normally do. We're going to take a little detour today because I wanted to talk to Mahlakai about the workshop that they're doing at the end of the workshop, at the end of the program. So we are, which I love that we're doing this out of order, because I think that's one thing that wrapping our heads around, especially around demon work and grief and dreams, is that nothing is linear. So to be able to like let go of time and space and just land wherever you show up, I think is a really helpful thing to be able to do. So we're taking a little detour today, and we're going to be talking with Mahlakai about death and grieving, and what the hell that has to do with demons, and what this Die a Living Death workshop is going to look like. And then we'll get back on track tomorrow, which is Friday, and we'll be talking about Pretend. We're going to talk about the game Pretend. Another way to say that is role playing. Pretend was one of my favorite games to play when I was a kid. Adult versions of role playing often appears in BDSM and kink scenes. And so you can decide where you want to land on that spectrum. And then on Saturday, we're going to be talking about the drop. We're actually going to probably be talking a little bit about the drop today too. So the drop is what happens after expansion. Another way to put that is contraction. So it is after we expand and we have these very expansive experiences, natural law tells us that contraction follows. And if we don't prepare for it, and we don't embrace it, and we don't have a good relationship with it, we can often find ourselves saying, what's wrong with me? I don't know what's wrong with me. I don't know why I'm so tired. I don't know why I'm crying about nothing. I don't know why I'm suddenly thinking about my ex-boyfriend that I haven't thought of in 20 years. I don't know why, this wounding from kindergarten is coming up all of a sudden. And so it can be really helpful to have a very conscious and intentional relationship with contraction. Contraction is where integration happens. And so the more we can get on board with having this living relationship with contraction, with death, with loss, with grief, with drop, it just gets easier. Life just gets a little bit easier. I don't know if easier is the way to phrase that, but that's the word I'm going to use for today. So that's where we've been, that's where we are now, and that's where we're going. Today, I'm talking to Mahlakai, and I'm so excited to talk to Mahlakai, and I'm sure we're going to go on and on and on, and we'll have to contain ourselves a little bit. I'm so excited to talk to you, Mal, because we've been talking death and dreams and demons for a little bit, and I enjoy our chat so much. So Mahlakai is a Reaper magician and a living death doula. So I know that you have a certification in being a death doula, and that becoming a living death doula is a thing that you created, right? Based on your own experience with being in a living relationship with death. So tell us a little bit more about your magic, what that means to you to be a living death doula.
Yeah, so I did do an end of life certification, of and learning officially officially how to tend to those who are passing, and learning a lot about physical death. I've spent a lot of time with the idea of physical death and working with physical death in various manners. Even, you know, the biggest manner being experiential. I am a survivor of an NDE, or a near-death experience. Mine was brought on by suicide. That's as much as I'll say about that, just to avoid trigger. And so, you know, having experienced it myself and spent a lot of time learning about it, there's a lot of teachings about death that come from that. There's a lot of teachings about death that has come from my work with the paranormal. I used to be a medium, and going and doing hauntings and working with the occult. And the occult has such a rich life of working with spirits and people who have crossed over, and the amount of different learnings that I've gotten from other religions as I've worked with witchcraft. The witchcraft can branch in a lot of different directions. And if you really want to honor the cultures that a lot of those witchcraft teachings come from, you end up going down a rabbit hole of learning about a whole bunch of different cultures and religions. It's actually really good to do that. And yeah, and spending basically my whole life in connection and relationship with death in various means. It mostly started when I was very young and has gone on and grown ever since. It's also grown in the living death sense because of my history of surviving complex trauma. Complex meaning multiple traumas. I'm a survivor of various different kinds of domestic violence from different sources. I'm a survivor of, you know, like your basic bullying, your advanced bullying, like put it on a spectrum. We have been there through all of it. I'm a queer person, struggled with a lot of identity death. Yeah, it just goes on and on and on, that deep, deep, deep connection. For me, when it comes to living death and wanting to push living death, it really came about because I was at a point in my career a few years ago where I really got tired of just doing tarot as a job. I really enjoyed witchcraft and magic. I wanted to teach a lot more about it. But the thing with tarot is, like, people come to your table and you tell them the things, and you can give them some suggestions of what to do. And it's like, based on what I see, here's some suggestions if you want them. Okay, cool, bye, see you later. Have fun with that I just told you, all these things that just came up in the cards. And some of those things can be so heavy hitting and so hard for someone to hear, that you just have somebody on the other end of the table who just is like, fuck, well, what the fuck do I do with that? And then you're just like, well, here are some things that I can give you in these last 5 minutes of this tarot reading. Bye, thank you for your patronage. And I just really got tired of doing that. And I was like, okay, I want to teach shadow work. And I would also like to point out that I was totally on track. Like, you know, I was like, I'm going to teach some shadow work and get into the discomfort, because I think people are missing a relationship with discomfort and some tools and techniques to deal with the shadow and the unconscious. And really understanding what it is, because I also got it at that point, you know, the early part of the trend where it was like super shamed. Shadow was like hardcore shamed. That's where I was at. I was like, fuck that. That's a lie. I know that from all my trauma experience. I'm not up on this shit. Let's teach something different. And so I set up courses and workshops that so many people really enjoyed, but then there was still a wall that they hit. It's like they did the shadow work and they could only get so deep. And then it got stuck again, and they got stuck again. And I was like, what the fuck? Excuse my language. I'm such a sailor.
I'm a sailor too.
They got, yeah, thank you. You're tipping my cap. They still get stuck. They still get stuck. You'd be like, okay, I'm comfortable with discomfort to a certain degree, and then I'm stuck again. And I can't get any deeper than this level. And it's like, why? Why is it that I can't help open the path to where I can go, and other people are having trouble going where I go in my magic, in my daily practice, in my understandings, in my connections, in my relationships with others? What's missing? And through a little journey, I realized it's because I know how to die, and I literally have, and how
Mm,
big that is in changing your whole perspective on everything. And that I have a lot of teachings from death that you just don't get unless you have a relationship with death. So on the journey, I was like, well, I need to learn more about death and really understand this relationship that I have and put it into context. And that's what led me to doing more official study in end of life doulaing, doing more official study into what the Western ideals of death are, doing a lot of study into um, the experiences of others who've had NDEs, the experiences of others who've done physical death, watching the disconnects between things and going, okay, we have these huge movements happening right now that are gorgeous, like uh, that are all about helping people die differently when they're going through physical death, being supported. Everybody's learning how to, everybody, their dog is starting to learn how to be an end of life doula, which absolutely should. Because if I had it my way, everyone would be an end of life doula and that career would be obsolete as a way to make money because everyone's doing it because that's what we want. We want everybody to be able to hold each other that way. Um, and there's this movement about understanding physical death a different way and understanding grief for the physical loss of a loved. There's still a barrier, just get lost when it comes to being alive. And it's like, well, you know, when somebody physically dies, the people around them die too. Their
right.
identity dies. Anybody who's queer knows that there's so much change and transformation that feels so deeply impactful, like death. It is death in changing your identity and therefore watching the ricochet and domino effect of changes in your relationships around you. Anybody who sits here and does magic work, this is why we do this, who does magic work, they do a big spell for change or abundance, and then they recognize that that spell, once they actually start getting what they want, if they really did good on that spell, it causes everything around them to uplift and just it blows up, because any structures you had that didn't support that abundance will come crumbling down. Anything in you that doesn't support you receiving that abundance comes crumbling down, and you have a whole identity change and a change in relationship with yourself, with others, with the entire world around you in these really big and intense ways. So really, it's like it comes down to the fact that death is fundamentally about identity and relationships. Like, and if it's fundamentally about identity and relationships, then it's the exact same thing that happens when you're alive than when you're dead. There's a million, there's a, well, a million, there's quite a few poets out there who make the comparison between death and living, that living is just dying 1,000 deaths before you take the
Right.
big
And
final one.
there's
Yeah.
the Tibetan book of the living and the dead, right? Like that is death magic
Yes.
is potent magic. And many
Yeah.
wisdom traditions absolutely say that the key to good magic is learning how to die.
Yes. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Because you have to be able to receive the change. And we also have to be able
Yeah.
to harvest the whole of the magic, not just the
Right.
forward push of the magic. We also need the part in the contraction where we integrate. It's like an extra harvest of energy to move your magic forward and to sustain you through the change.
Right. Right. So do you find, Mal, that one of the things that you witness is when a person does not harvest the full magic, meaning they don't actually die the death, you know, they run right up to the edge and then nope, sorry, not gonna go there. Do you find that they get stuck in a loop and have and go back to basically like the magic keeps giving them this chance to die, to jump off the cliff and die, and they don't do it, so they go back and they do this, you know, maybe I'll try it with this teacher, or maybe I'll try this spell, or maybe I'll do it this way, or maybe I'll try it in my love life, not my career, or whatever. And it's just a loop that keeps happening when we don't agree to just go ahead and die.
Yeah, you know what? I think it is a loop that we get stuck in. And I also don't want to shame the loop, because I think that I also want to
Yeah.
point out that death is really fucking hard. So if
Yeah,
there's a particularly hard one and you need to loop a few times, like pat yourself on the back is okay. Like you are okay to stand at the cliff edge and not jump off for a while. Like it's
absolutely. I think for me anyway, I'll speak from experience.
yeah.
I think I have a tendency to really love standing at the edge quite a bit. Not so much the jumping off, but boy, I love to look down that cliff. I love to get to the edge. And so, yeah, it is a fucking hard process. And,
Mhm.
let's also just acknowledge that our relationship in this country, especially in the West, especially, has a hard relationship with grief and death. And in fact, we'll basically, do anything that we need to do to avoid grief and death. And so, in addition to, do you need to loop a couple of times before you're willing to jump off that cliff? Yeah, that's no shame, no blame. Do it. Go
Mhm.
for it. You do you. And also, like, get some support, right? That's why we have
Yeah.
death doulas.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. It's like, doing a practice, and for me a very magical practice, because it is a very magical practice. It's funny when I come and do these workshops about, ecstatic eulogies, the very basics of how to honor yourself when you've died, honor your past self, honor your demons, which is what we're going to get into here. It's like this is actually still quite surface. Like when we do the work, the response is often, holy fuck, that's profound, and oh my god, what did I just open, and holy shit, this magic is huge and deep. And then I'm always like, oh, you don't even know, there's so much more. Like it keeps going. Like don't stop there, it keeps going, it goes so much deeper than those things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I'm going to teach some funeral magic in this, and you can use this funeral magic, which is like one of the best basics of death magic, over and over and over and over again, and it gets increasingly profound as you do it more and more. And know that death magic still has so many layers, and there's so much more to dig up with it, and there's so much more to teach about it too.
Absolutely. And I have to say, I've done the funeral magics several times now,
Yeah.
and I'm super fucking lazy. And so I totally half ass it. And it's still profound. Profound.
Yeah. You know what? I love that, because funeral magic and grief magic and death magic allows you space to half-ass things and still have it be impactful and still have it be exactly what you need, because there is no like wrong way to do funeral magic. There's just
Right.
your time, your cycle, your needs, your way.
Yeah. Beautiful. Okay. So we're going to make the connection between, why in the hell are we doing death magic at the end of a demon's wicked games, playing with demons and working with our dreams? However, before we get into that, you came to my Demons and Dreams workshop and you identified a demon for yourself, and you've been playing a game with your demon. Yes.
Yeah, I have been playing a game with my demon. I went to this wonderful workshop. And Julie, I love your magic so much. There's been very few teachings that I don't use on a regular basis at this point.
Oh, thank you. That means a
So,
lot.
oh yeah, no, it's like a core of all my practice. It's integrated into everything at this point. So the demons workshop was really deep in the sense that we were using our dreams and exploring dream fragments, just like a random dream fragment, and then connecting it to talking about slash with and identifying a demon that we have. And after doing some excavating with my dream fragment, I recognized that I have what I thought was an anxiety demon is actually underneath it, hiding out a praise demon. And that praise demon just loves getting praise from everyone. And that's also where the anxiety comes from, because then I'm like, oh gosh, am I going to do something that doesn't get praise? Am I going to go against the grain? Which, by the way, is my whole existence, like just doing death shit. It's like, then I get really anxious, hence the anxiety I work with on a daily basis. And so I also discovered with this praise demon that I don't praise myself enough, and that
Mm,
I'm still in many areas following the status quo in a way that there's a self in me that needed to die. So I held a funeral for them actually this month, and really started excavating that. And I started fulfilling the needs of my demon, to praise myself, to open myself up to praise, to actually receive praise wherever and whenever I can, which just feels selfish and arrogant and yucky. And I'm like, oh my God, it's all these things that I'm not supposed to do, but I'm going to do it and see what happens. And it's actually been so calming and so delicious. I started playing with my partner, my husband, who is also non-binary. So they're a husband who also has a praise demon. So we got into a month-long game of unabashedly praising each other about whatever we can. So even just being like, oh my gosh, the way you sat down on that couch right now is just, it was just so elegant. And it accentuated the strength and structure of your body. just being like,
amazing.
wow. Or, yeah. Yeah, it's been really incredible. And then coming up against, well, when is it hard to receive praise? When is it hard to give praise? When do I shut down my praise demon? When are they shut down in their praise demon? And there's just been so much that we've been excavating. And again, so much that is tied to past selves, because it's so easy to recognize how many times or how often past selves are built off of either meeting or not meeting the needs of a demon. Like overly, right. Or like either meeting them just in a kind of sideways manner, or not meeting those needs of a demon. So I had a lot of past selves built off of either overly seeking praise to the point of people pleasing, doing other things like that.
Yeah.
And then I have past selves that are built off of shutting down my praise demon so that I can be more authentic to myself. However, still not meeting the wholeness of myself because of that shutdown. So demons, right. And demons lead to death.
Demons do lead to death. Absolutely. And I think this is important too, is to remember that our demons are part of us. They're part of the whole, and they're actually on our side. They really are on our side. And, when, just like with anybody else, any other part, when we don't get our needs met, we find different ways to get our needs met, and it comes out sideways. So if we're judging our praise demon or our, I was talking with Drew today, and Drew had this experience this morning where we were identifying her demon, and it's this demon that loves to make people bend to its will. And there's a part of us that's like horrified to say that, right? I would never want to take anyone's free will away. But there's also a part of us that's like, yeah, it's fucking fun to bend people to our will, to bend how powerful do we feel when we feel like we have decided a thing and then it happens, we make it happen. That's powerful. That feels powerful. That feels thrilling. It feels exhilarating. And so understanding that if we don't accept that and love that and find empathy for that and stay curious with that and give it unreasonable approval, it's going to come out sideways. It's going to come out a different way. And for Drew, her demon was making her bend to its will to get its needs satisfied. And so she's like, let's not do that anymore. Let's do something else.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's like finding safe and actually helpful ways where suddenly your demon that might be holding you back in one way becomes something that's bolstering you when you really allow it to have a helpful outlet.
And consent-based. I think consent-based is important too, right? So the demon has this need to get people to bend to its will. And Drew has said, no, I'm not going to participate in that. And so there's no consent. And so there's this non-consent based relationship between the two of them. And we've got to get into consent with our demon. And so we've got to do some, you can negotiate, I just think it's fun to play games and to experiment and to see how everybody can get their needs filled within the context of playing games together. Like you're doing with your partner. It's this praise game, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. That's sorry, that was so hot, that like consent-based relationship with your demons. Because I'm like, you know what? You're right. That isn't entirely, it is about consent-based relationship with your demons. And that is that's wow, that's a really that just hit me really in this gorgeous manner. And then I also just immediately was like, oh right, like a lot of this work that I'm presenting as well is about building a consent-based relationship with death.
Yeah.
Because death is when we definitely aren't in relationship with death and we aren't in the flow, it's largely non-consensual. That's not to say that you can have control and wield death by having a consent-based relationship. It's more about understanding and being in connection in a way that you can accept and receive, and also know how to be the one who wields sometimes, because that's the thing with death is we do need to wield and be wielded and know how to work in that flow. So it's the same in the relationship with your demons, wielding and being wielded.
Right, right. Which is why I think, these principles of BDSM and kink are so helpful,
Mhm.
because we
Yeah.
do get into these, when we can apply these principles to these relationships, either these inner relationships or even outer relationships. We know that a
Yeah.
relationship is give and take, right? We know
Yeah.
that a healthy relationship, you allow yourself to be wielded and to wield. It's a give and take. Another way to say that is to allow yourself to be influenced and to agree to influence the other person. And of course, you get to have boundaries. I think that's the other thing too, is that understanding, when we're talking about consent based, we're talking about really getting in the driver's seat instead of everything happening to you and feeling like a victim, getting into a place where you get very clear about, like, this is unacceptable. This is a boundary. This is not a game I'm willing to play, or this is not a version of the game that I'm willing to play. It's a boundary for me. It's a hard no for me. Um, and I think, that's where we like, where that nuance can come through, and not a hard no now in this moment is not necessarily a hard no for me tomorrow either, or next week.
Mhm.
So I'm glad that you brought up that you have CPTSD, because I think,
Yeah.
as do I, as do many people. I don't know that there's anybody that has survived this pandemic that does not have it by
Mhm.
now. Um, so I think sometimes when we do this shadow work and we do this personal development work, when we do magic, it can often feel like um, violation. It can often feel very
Mhm.
unsafe
Yes.
to our nervous systems, because we're not fully in consent, and because we're not checking ourselves along the way, and doing those embodied check-ins, like, am I at red right now? Am I at yellow? Am I at green?
Mhm.
Where am I right
Yeah.
now? And calling halt to the play when necessary.
Yeah, that's a really good point because, a lot of the types of shadow work as it progresses, it's gone out of the stage of shaming shadow work in popular culture, and now shadow work is everywhere and everyone and their dog is grabbing onto it. But when it's like early adoption stage, it hasn't been refined. We do often see um, some of the more raw forms, and the raw forms can mean not being trauma safe, and having a lot of
Right.
people who don't have experience with trauma working with something that requires a lot of experience with trauma, or seeing something where which I was definitely guilty of at one point in my career, where if you have experience with trauma, you think you're automatically uh, uh, educated enough to support other people in their trauma, or to give them the tools they need to work with their trauma, which is a big mistake that I made at one point, and a big mistake that I do see a lot of people make now. It's like, it just because you had it doesn't mean you can teach it, doesn't mean that you can support another person in it. Doesn't mean, because supporting another person in it, very, very different than going through it yourself. And I can even say that about doing living death work, grief work, and end of life doula work. Supporting another person in it is very different than going through it. You have to have a lot of different tool sets.
Yeah. Yeah. That's such an important point. And I feel like too, those of us who feel like we've gone along the path enough of healing our trauma can sometimes also make the mistake of entering into something and thinking that we're going to be okay, or that we know how to, we know how to navigate this, and that we should be able to do it at the level of whoever else we decide is, the person we're going to compare ourselves to. And so I think it's really helpful to have containers, whether it's built into the container of the program that you take, or it's just built into your own self, of I'm not going to do anything that violates my boundaries. And I'm going to listen, right? So if I need to tweak something, or it doesn't matter if the facilitator says this is a mandatory meeting that you must come to, or a mandatory, I'm a grown ass woman. I don't have to do anything mandatory anymore. Like, no. But being willing to stand up for those parts that are like, I need a yellow right now. I need to pause right now, or this is a red for me. I'm out.
Yes, like know your edges, know your motherfucking edges, and be okay to be brutally honest about them and make everyone upset, because you need to know your edges. And the other thing I think I'd ask, for teachers, because sometimes because I have an EOL certification, and I work like for an end of life doula work, because I have so much experience with death, I get asked by other people who are interested in working in death work or being a doula, like what it takes to be that and how to get started. And I never give them education resources right off the bat. What I give them first is a question. And the question is, which I feel like should go for all practitioners, even witchcraft practitioners and teachers at this point, is are you wanting to teach this because you are at a point where you are ready to hold space for another person and everything that they're going to come with, even if they have incredibly different views and experiences than you do, even if they are going to say no and hold a different path than you and want to go on a different path than you, and maybe not follow your suggestions and your advice. Are you wanting to teach this because it's just at this point a big part of your life and a genuine offering from your soul? Or are you wanting to teach this, and sort of gets real sticky? Are you wanting to teach this because you are actually seeking a closer relationship with the material you are teaching? You are still trying to heal something in yourself, but it feels less vulnerable to teach to another person than to face it head on. Because I see a lot of people teaching who are actually trying to heal themselves, and then they're not capable of listening to what a student, a client, or a patron, or a peer is coming to say to them. They can't receive because their giving is an act of their own healing. And it's not to say that you don't learn and that you don't heal while you teach. You absolutely do. But it's like there's a threshold. It's like you can heal and learn. You have to be able to receive a whole fuck ton to do a teaching role. That's my thing. I don't know what you think about that, what your experience is.
That's really profound. And this is a whole other tangent, and I'm sure we'll keep having this. I'm fascinated. But I don't want to be on here for 2 hours this time around, not this time around, maybe another time. So I would love
one day.
That's got all kinds of sparks going off for me. So for sure. Let's circle back just a little bit, and I'd like to talk about just because it may not be crystal clear, like it's clear in my mind, I'm sure it's clear in your mind, but just because it may not be crystal clear for everybody yet. So why does it feel, I'm sorry, before we do that, I would love to hear, you are the guest facilitator in my dream group, the Academy for Wild Dream Magic. And this month we're working with grief and death with our dreams. Surprise, surprise. And at our dream circle last Saturday, you gave a definition of grief that I think is just brilliant. So I'd love for you to offer that again for us. And then we'll talk about how your magic fits in with demons and dreams.
Yes. Okay. So the definition of grief is not a feeling. Grief is a practice, a skill, and a way of life. Personally, for me, a magical one. It is a practice, skill, and way of life of engaging a relationship with death in a way that you can integrate change and transformation. Boom. That's it. That's the whole thing.
So
And I really like it. Yeah.
go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, it is because it removes grief from being solely a feeling of pain. We currently define grief in a way that grief is a feeling of immense sorrow. And even though immense sorrow is absolutely a part of grief, I feel that grief is more of an umbrella of feelings because there's a million and one feelings that happen when you are going through grief. But the actual act of engaging those emotions becomes a skill and a practice. And there's a whole bunch of other tools that get used part of a grieving process that go far beyond just engaging or witnessing your emotions. So it's an expanded definition that allows us to really see the wholeness of what grief is.
Right, right. And I love that you say that it's a practice, it's a skill set, it's a process, right? For being able to be in relationship with loss and death. And I think removing it as a feeling or an emotion is so helpful. It's helpful for me because then I was able to see like, oh, within this process, there's actually all the emotions really at some point, right? There's joy
Yeah.
and
Yep.
love and praise, as well as devastation and sadness and anger and fear. It's
Mm-hmm.
really just sort of like all the things.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. And to work on uh, why, like, I mean, I guess just to mention it being a practice and skill also means that like it's not something that you are immediately good at. You know, it's not like
Right.
I'm just there's also no perfect either. There's no perfect grieving, there's no perfect dying.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's so interesting. Here's another tangent that we could go off on too as well. So I'll just mention it and then we'll stick to the program. But it's interesting how we believe that mastery is the goal, is always the goal, right? And so that we have to get good at grieving rather than just saying, you know what, I'm just in a relationship with grief, and at some points in my life I'm going to feel okay with it, and at some points in my life I'm probably not going to feel okay with it. And that doesn't mean
Yes.
I'm good or bad at it. It just means that's what's present right now.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. That's very true. And you know what? I would venture so far as because sometimes I use these words. I say, yeah, working with the grief practice, one of the benefits of it is that it gives you a mastery over adaptability and transformation. Um, but with a wink, I will also say, mastery doesn't look how you think it does.
Yeah, that's very true. That's a whole other conversation.
Yeah.
Okay, so what in your mind? What is the connection between demons, working with our demons, working with our dreams, and this death practice?
I'm gonna say it in a semi-non-linear fashion because death and life is non-linear, but the connection between demons and dreams and death is, you know, by the end of this program, I feel like in that contraction, there might be a moment that you hit like I hit with my demons where I need to go, fuck, I had that demon this whole time. Whole time I've been making all these decisions with that demon on my shoulder, and just having that moment of loss and even feeling a sense of, and you're allowed to feel this feeling even if it wasn't, even if there's a different meaning you want to ascribe to it later, whatever, don't care. Give yourself a moment to be like, fuck, it feels like I wasted a lot of time with that
Mm,
demon doing it the way I was doing it before, and fuck, I wish I had known what I know now, and fuck, I lost a lot of relationships because of this, and you know, fuckity fuck. And it's that's the moment that you hit after you do some big excavating work on yourself. And that's the moment where we often need to pause and go, okay, this deserves some grief.
Yeah.
I deserve to take a moment to look at all the pain and all the joy and all the things that are coming up for me right now, and to decay properly that energy. Like if you were to look at it from a physical death standpoint, when somebody physically dies, hopefully this doesn't always happen, but in an, let's say, a perfect world ideal scenario, you get to spend time with the body, you get to wash and bathe the body, you may be with them for their last breaths, you get to wrap them and anoint them in oils, and depending what culture you're from, you might sing to them, keen with them, do a whole slew of things with that body as you transfer it to the ground. And then when it's in the ground, in, you know, again, depending on what space you are in the world, you might be, you know, making sure it's in a space where it'll be found by different animals to properly decay, where it will be planted in a lush and rich and beautiful bug and microbiome rich garden so that it can decay. You are going to maybe even harvest something from decay, lots of people and stuff. And there's so much that you do with it. And the exact same thing that we're looking to do with our demons is that we're going to hit the fuckity fuck wall, and then spend the time properly decaying the energy and allowing it the space to decompose, allowing you the space to be upset that it had to decompose in the first place, or that your relationship to this demon is decomposing in what it was now and you're forming a new one, and to give you that sustenance to keep going and moving forward and enacting a new relationship with your demons. Because really that is what death is. Death is, as much as this is an odd way to look at it, especially if we are in a death phobic part of society, of this world, death is sustenance. My favorite first practice for magic being to recognize where death already is, and as an example, looking at your dinner plate, because there ain't nothing on your dinner plate that isn't dead or decaying in its current state on your dinner plate, and that is
Yeah.
our sustenance. So it's
Yeah.
not like the goal is to make it sustenance. It's not a goal, it's just a fact. It's just a
Right.
fact.
Right. Yeah, you know, when I started on Monday talking about this program, I really was staying away from like, what are the benefits of this program? Because of course you're going to get benefits of this program. Like you can't not go through something like this and not have some kind of change or transformation. And also that's not the point. It's not the point. It's a fact. It'll happen. It's a byproduct. It's not why to do this though. The journey in and of
Yeah.
itself is the value of doing it.
Yeah.
I found that in working with some of my demons, the thing that came up for me was really needing to mourn. How do I want to phrase this? Really needing to mourn the life that wasn't.
Yeah.
So the little girl that did not get the support from her parents that she wanted.
Yes. Absolutely. And you know
Girl
what? That
that
brings up a
didn't.
really good point.
Yeah.
Oh, no, go ahead. There's a slight delay.
Oh, yeah, there's a little lag between just, you know, the specifically for me, it was the little girl that didn't get to have the parents that she wanted to have. So didn't get to have the mother-daughter relationship that I wanted to have, didn't get to
Yeah.
have the father-daughter relationship that I wanted to have. And so there, and I don't want you to lose your point. So keep it in mind because I'm sure it's brilliant. And also I had to mourn the little girl that didn't want to grow up, that was really committed to staying little and young and immature, because she kept thinking, if I stay young and immature and little, maybe I will get that from somewhere, someone, and kept trying to find it. This is part of the grieving process with my enmeshment demon that I was working with. And so I had to grieve the fact that that little girl needed to grow up. She needed to grow up and mature.
So I'm hearing that for you, you're recognizing the multifacetedness of the grief and identifying where your senses of loss and also your senses of joy were, which often become the same thing in grieving.
Absolutely.
And that there was part of you grieving that you didn't have the people to provide it to you in the first place, what you needed, and part of you grieving that now this little girl has to change and move on and grow up, knowing that they didn't have it and didn't get it in the way that they wanted. And that's, and that was essentially my point, is that, I'm talking about like one aspect, grieving that you even had the demon. And then we're talking about these different areas where loss comes up, and often there's multiple. And that's back to that old quote. It's old for me and new for literally anyone who has not met me before, but it's death loves dominoes. It's his favorite games. Just stack them all up and knock them all down. It's not actually how you play the game of domino, you know? So when we do this work with our demons will unearth multiple things, multiple senses of loss, multiple senses of joy. And in grieving, doing a funeral for our demons, we're going to identify some of the most potent losses that are unique to you. Everyone's going to have different ones, and just learn how to stop and decay through them, which I also think is part of supporting the trauma of this space. I think grief and death work has been one of the most potent tools to dealing with trauma ever, because when you work with grief, and you work with the principles of allowance that are within grief, how you work with personal development changes entirely, and your relationship to what you allow in your life changes entirely. And it found as like the missing piece. It's like the missing piece I've always been looking for trauma work all these years, 20 years, and I've been looking for this missing piece, and grief work was it, and death work was it. And it's been that missing piece for a lot of my clients as well. It allows the breath. It allows the breath it allows utterly everything. Utterly everything is allowed in grief. And how can that not be the breath of healing that we need when utterly everything is allowed there?
That's so beautifully put. And that's been my experience too. When a quick little story. I know we need to wrap up here pretty soon, and I want you to be able to tell us about the workshop. When Mal and I met at first, we were just having a connection call. Hey, I see you, you're brilliant. Hey, I see you, you're brilliant. But I happened to show up in a space of grieving. I had just experienced a loss, and Mal just held such beautiful, amazing space for me that I was instantly able to melt into it and to receive it. Now, have I done work on being able to do that? Yes, I have. But they made it feel so safe to just be like, hey, I just met you, but let me cry in front of you and tell you about this loss that I just experienced. And, throughout that, and the different conversations that we've had and the different ways that I've engaged with your magic, it absolutely puts a whole different spin on magic and on personal development. And I agree with you. It helps. I think it helps with dealing with trauma, like 1,000% for sure. I feel like there was something else I was going to say, but it left. So I'll just leave it there.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for your vulnerability and open vulnerability and sharing. We wouldn't even have this connection if there wasn't the open vulnerability and sharing and moving in space. And now, and then likewise, I end up coming to you, and now my whole life has changed because of your magic. So it's mutual. I'm gonna have a hot second of being super ethical. Even though grief work is an immense help in trauma, and absolutely feels like the missing piece to me with the experiences that I've had in my life, all of them. I will also say that does not mean that you should totally shun classical licensed medical professionals when working with trauma,
For sure.
and that you should not have multiple supports is always the best. That's not always possible, but get support where you can, and do not shun classical modes of medicine, especially because hot tip, because I keep up on it, the trauma sphere is getting better in the classical medical world slowly. I know, babies, I know it's slow. I feel you. I cringe every time I look at it, but it is getting there, and there are some really fucking good therapists and psychologists out there. Some of them are witches now, and on top of that, they come from all sorts of different religious backgrounds, and on top of that, a lot of them are trauma survivors who are doing the work and being ready to hold space for others. So because of that, there's an influx of people who survive shit just like you and me, who deserve a chance and who could maybe help you. So it's a long slog through that. So I understand where it gets stuck, but don't give up on it yet. And also, hell yes, work with dreams and demons and death doulas and living death doulas while you're at it.
Yeah, do all the things as much as you're able to do them. Yeah, do the art therapy, do dreams, do pleasure practices, do it all, because we're working towards wholeness. So not that you have to do it all at once. I'm not saying that you have to do it all at once, but yes, definitely find all the different things that plug in and that feel good to you, and keep noticing what feels good to you. So I could talk to you forever, but I want to make sure that we talk about the workshop. And I want you to tell us what's going to be in this workshop so that we can make sure that this is included in the live today. But before we get into that, I want to just mention my dreams actually have helped me immensely to process grief, not to go through the grief process. So there are many, many times that I've had dreams where I've, like practiced feeling in the dream state these high sensations that I might not readily want to feel in the waking state. So just wanted to say that, like, for me, my dreams are always there to help me out. Demons are always there to help you out. Like, they're on your side, and they may come through as a nightmare, and they may come through as not a particularly pleasant dream, but it's on your side, not on your case. It is trying to help you process the vast emotions and sensations that go in this container of grieving.
Hell yes. And I will second that. My dreams have been so immensely helpful, and working with dream states even deeper and learning how to has been so immensely helpful with death work and with death and grief magic with living death.
Beautiful. Okay, so let's talk about the workshop. It's on November 20th. It is the fourth Saturday of this program, and it is at 1 p.m. Central, and it's going to be about 2 hours long. Is that right? Did we say 2 hours?
Yeah, we're working on 2 hours. It's going to be 2 hours, mostly because we're going to be working at a breathy pace, a very breathing, expansive pace, because again, we're hitting grief, and grief needs some air to breathe.
Yeah, and I would even recommend, like, creating a little retreat for yourself. Could you take the whole day to be in ceremony almost with yourself and with this workshop? And we'll give you some more tips and advice and, like, ideas for doing that. But tell us about the workshop. What's going to happen at the workshop?
Okay, so the workshop, Dial Living Death, we are working on creating a funeral for a version of ourselves or something that is coming up with our demons. So the first thing we're going to be doing is identifying what's the what is the grief that we are actually working with, being able to voice it, hold it, and have it be present and learn how to allow it. We're also going to be looking at where are we not allowing it, and what factors of allowance are not being honored. So we're going to talk about allowance a lot. Allowance is like step number one for grief. And then we're going to be talking about ritualizing our funeral and how a whole ritualistically honored funeral specifically for you about whatever it is that you were grieving, and to intuitively follow that and being able to share that with each other, again, for more witnessing and allowance within this workshop. So all of that together is going to create quite a beautiful thing for you to work with, a great experience of having grief honored and witnessed in a group setting, as well as being able to take something with you to follow up on to do this ritual. And we are going to start some of the grieving within the workshop, but we can't do it all in the workshop. So we'll send you home with your own intuitively built, gorgeously meditatively built ritual. We're going to be doing some magic about it, of course we are, to figure out what to do with our rituals and diving quite deep into seeing our grief from a different angle magically. I don't want to give too much away because I'm too excited and I'll blather forever, but that's what we're doing.
Yeah. And again, I mean, I definitely have done the funeral magic. It was a gift that you gave me. And it is even half-assed. It is so this is my lazy witch, and I've totally embraced my lazy witch. I'm totally fine with being a lazy witch. But what happens is I create these really robust rituals in my head, right? And then like I might do half of it or an aspect of it. But because I've allowed myself in the imaginal realm to go ahead and just go for it, I create this large production in my head. It's almost as if that so your body actually doesn't know the difference between what's quote unquote real and what's imagination. And so would I get more out of doing it in the big way? Well, it kind of depends. Like if that causes more anxiety or I'm not able to really arrive and be present, then no. Which is why I end up half-assing a lot of things. So I have a theater degree. I want to go big. I really do, but I don't have a crew behind me. So I just do it in my imagination. And then, I get a fire going and play some songs and I'm good.
Yes, and we are definitely going to be using our dreamy, waking dream imaginal realm to work some of this magic out and to work some of this funeral detail out during the workshop. And then, yeah, when you get into person things, there's going to be a whole lot of things that could happen when you actually work with doing it in person. I'm going to talk about all of those things, mostly just to let you know that calm down, it's okay.
Yeah.
About all the different ways it could go. Calm down, it's okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, because you could have a whole thing planned. You could even set up a whole altar in a whole room, and then you won't touch it for a month. Like that's how grief can go sometimes. And calm down, it's okay. It's all good.
Yep, I've been through that. Absolutely. Like plan the whole thing out, get the altar set up, and then it's like, right, like you run up to the edge and you're like, nope, not today. And that's okay.
Example,
That's okay.
I'm, super practiced in death and grief magic is the thing I live and breathe every day. And I want to tell you that there is a little hay poppet out on my porch right now, cleansing itself in the repeated rain of the mountains that I am at. And I have not felt ready or willing to go out and finish that particular funeral because that was the big one for me. I'm not there yet. And that is okay. I am noticing that in my cycle, I am not there yet. So I am going to let it sit and cleanse in the rain until I am ready. Until I am, and by ready, I mean recognizing that part in my cycle that is moving forward.
Right. Yeah. I love how much allowance there is with your work. And I really try to bring that into my work as well. I'm not perfect at it. I definitely have that programming within me that's like, do more, be more, have more, all that stuff, right? Be better, be better, be better. But I really love how many practitioners out there are now embracing this idea of like, you're not broken. You don't need to be fixed. Go at your pace. It's okay. Allowance. You're not doing it wrong. You can't do it wrong. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
This has been amazing, as always. Is there anything else that you want to say or questions you want to ask or anything like that before we wrap up?
I am good on questions. I just want to say thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much for our awesome conversations. They always go somewhere amazing and deep, and like we could shoot off down a million paths and they're all going to lead to a rainbow laden waterfall. So thank
Love
you
it.
so much. And thank you everyone for watching. And I'm really excited for everyone who signs up for Wicked Games, working with our demons, and see you at the end for the funeral.
Yeah, and you're gonna participate with us in Wicked Games,
I am.
correct?
Yeah, that's
Yes.
actually true. I
So,
am going to participate the whole time because, of course, because why would I not work with my demons some more?
yeah, so yeah, you'll get to absorb more of Mal's magic throughout and we have, oh my gosh, we have such a group shaping up. I'm just over the moon about the people who are saying yes to this magic. It's thrilling. I'm excited. I do a little happy dance every time somebody signs up. So I think I think it's just going to be amazing. Um, I'm going to leave the link for everybody to get more information about the program and to sign up if you want to sign up for the program in the comments. Of course, if you have any questions for myself or Mal, please just leave them in the comments and we'll come in. It's helpful, especially I would imagine for Mal, if you tag us. So tag Mahlakai Rose. I'll probably see it because I get notified, but if you want to tag me, if you want to make sure that I respond to it, tag me for sure. We're happy to come back and answer your questions if you're watching this later. I wasn't really keeping my eye on the comments either because it's hard to do both the Zoom and the Facebook Live. So I don't know if there's anything there, but we'll go back and look. Mal, thank you so much. I'm so excited about this. This is going to be amazing. I'm excited to work with you
Super
again.
excited.
And yeah. Okay, so we will see you. I'm going to see your video later, and then we're going to
Yes, you
see
are.
you on Monday. Get started. Thank you,
Amazing. We'll
Mal.
see you then. Thank you so much.
Okay, bye.
Bye. Bye, everybody. Thank you.